So, story time. Thought this might be interesting to share with someone else in the motorcycling community. So, right now it's 2020. I've been riding for a few years in Oregon now, but rewind back to this was about 2009, so 11 years ago. Um, I was fairly new to the area. Like, and when I say fairly new, I mean like very, very new. I didn't know where anything was. I didn't know my way around. And at this point in time, like GPS navigation, like we're setting the scene here. GPS navigation is not what it was back then. You could buy like the little dash mounted TomTom units and things, but there wasn't a whole lot in the all weather sort of range, at least not to my knowledge. There wasn't a whole lot in the all weather range for motorcycles at the time. And so you had to kind of know where you were going or like plan your route accordingly, even for people that didn't buy the dash mounted GPS. The girl that I was dating at the time, we're married now, but she had a map book that she just left in the trunk of her car. And if there was ever anywhere that we were going where we didn't really know where it was, that's how you would look it up. And cell phones had internet. It wasn't great. Like 3G was the best that it was at the time. It wasn't for a couple of years before 4G LTE came out. So yeah, that was a while back. But I was working at this company, and I had been known as the guy that would ride his motorcycle to work, with the group of people that I associated with. And this one day, this guy comes up to me, a guy named Mike. He comes up to me and he says, "Hey, John, I just passed my motorcycle endorsement test. I just got I just passed my test. I got my endorsement, and I just bought a brand new bike. I'd love to go for a ride. Let's go find some place to ride." And he had bought a Ninja 650. And at the time, I was riding a brand new, I think that year I was riding a brand new 2009 ZX6R. I've owned several ZX6Rs since then. But anyway, this other guy, excuse me, that worked in near proximity to us overheard this conversation. He's like, "Oh, hey, I ride too. Let's get like a small group of us to go." It turned out it was just the three of us. And he's like, "Yeah, let's go for a ride to Hagg Lake, and we'll just go around Hagg Lake." And I had heard of Hagg Lake, but I had never been there. And I'm interested in kayaking and fishing and things of that nature. So I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to go to Hagg Lake. Let's do that and check this out." So fast forward to that next weekend. The plan was to meet at this other guy's house. I wish I could remember what his name was. The only thing that I remember right now off the top of my head was his Xbox gamer tag was the chemical formula for like ethanol, I think, something like that. But anyway, the plan was we were gonna meet up at this guy's house, and he was gonna take us for a ride to Hagg Lake. Again, I don't know where Hagg Lake is. I don't know anything about it. But anyway, I show up at Mike's house, and Mike is getting ready. He's getting all his gear together, getting ready to get on the road, and we're like, "All right, cool. Let's go to this guy's house." I've got my paper directions on how to get to this guy's house, and off we go. We arrive at this guy's place, and we park in his driveway and go and knock on the door. And so he lives in a I don't want to call it an apartment. It's more of a condo, but really not a condo. So his ground level was just his garage, and then his second story was his entryway into the home, and then he had a third story on top of that. And I'm guessing that was just living space, whatever. But we park in the driveway, and we go up the stairs, and we knock on the door, and he opens the door drinking a beer. He's like, "Oh, hey guys, what's up?" We're like, "Remember we were going for a ride today?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess we can go for a ride today." Already not looking great. It's just like, okay, cool. Sure, we're going to go for a ride. But he's drinking a beer. He's a real big guy. So, I don't think too much of it. And then he finishes his beer. He's like, "Yeah, you guys can have a seat. I need to, get a shower and get ready, and then we can head out." And while he's talking to us, he grabs two more beers, and he's kind of shuffling stuff together. And as he drinks this second beer that we've seen, and now bear in mind, this is I don't know, this is like 9 o'clock in the morning. So he's 2 beers in at 9 in the morning. And Mike and I have some concerns that we can see in each other's eyes, but we don't say anything. Again, this guy's a big guy, and he's been riding for a while. We're like, So anyway, but again, remember I said he took 2 beers out. He drinks his second one. He's like, all right, I'm going to go grab a shower. And then we hear him disappear into the shower with his beer, shower beer, which I don't drink beer, but I've heard the term enough, shower beer. So I guess it's a thing. But anyway, so yeah, he disappears into the shower with his beer. He comes out and he's getting himself dressed. And he's like, hey, I'm going to head down to the garage. I'll meet you guys down there. I'm going to lock up. So we go out his front door. And we go down, and his garage door is opening up, and he's drinking a fourth beer. At this point, I'm a little concerned. I'm a little more than a little concerned, but I was younger. I was a lot younger. I was, you know what, it's his ride. I didn't say anything. Mike and I kind of whispered about it a little bit. We're like, man, he's drinking a lot. But he opens up a fridge that he's got in his garage, and I don't remember what he was riding at the time. It was some kind of adventure bike. I don't remember. But anyway, he pops open his saddlebags, and he's tossing beers into the saddlebags, and then he takes a funnel out and fills up a flask with whiskey, takes a sip of it, tops it off again, tucks it into his jacket pocket. So now he's had some whiskey. He's had at least 4 beers. He's loaded more beer into his bike, and I'm worried. So, but again, don't say anything. I'm excited to see Hagg Lake. I had never seen Hagg Lake. It had been talked about. I wanted to go check this place out. So we get on the road, and he's leading the way. Again, nobody knows where anything is. Like, Mike's brand new to riding. I had been riding for a while. I rode in California, but I don't know where anything is in Oregon. I literally, if it wasn't on my commute from home to the office, which was a mile away, I didn't know where it was. I would have to stop and look it up. There was internet, like I could look it up and try to figure it out, but there wasn't turn-by-turn GPS, not really. It sort of worked. Bear in mind, I'm talking about Windows Phone, like the Android G1. I think it was the Motorola G1 was the first phone that came out with Android. That hadn't even released yet. So at least I think I'm in the right time frame for that. It might have... Anyway, moving on with the story. So we're following this guy, and he's riding fine. He's a little quick, but he's totally fine. And we're riding and riding and riding, and I got to see some of the prettiest stuff that I'd ever seen before. Bear in mind, at this time, I live in Beaverton, and so when I say we're riding and riding, I'm talking we're like an hour, more than an hour on the road, and finally we arrive at Hagg Lake. Some of you already know there's something wrong with this story. Me, I didn't know. I was new to Oregon. There's nothing wrong with this story yet. I'm going to Hagg Lake. I'm having a good time. Anyway, we arrive at Hagg Lake, and holy crap, Hagg Lake is probably one of the biggest lakes that I have ever seen. So a little bit of background on me is I have I'm not going to get too much into it, but I did a particular type of work that had me involved with the military for some of the training exercises and whatnot. So I've seen the Great Lakes, and I've seen big lakes. I've seen large bodies of water. I was at the Norfolk Naval Base for a while. I was at Coronado for a while. I've seen large bodies of water, ocean, whatever. But and again, the Great Lakes. I was in the Gulf for a bit. But yeah, so here we are at this huge freaking lake. And at this point, I'm getting self-signal again. And it's my girlfriend who's calling me because she expected me to go for, just a ride out to Hagg Lake, check it out, maybe do a lap around the lake and then come home. But now we're almost like 2.5, 3 hours in. The time to get to Mike's house. It's time to get from Mike's house to the other guy's house who wasn't ready and was drinking. And then the hour and a half that it took to get to the lake from this guy's house in Beaverton. We're like 3 hours in at this point. And she's like, hey, like, what's going on? I was like, we just got here. We literally just got here to the lake. I just came out of the Tillamook Forest, and here we are. And by the way, this is a huge freaking lake. I don't understand like why I haven't heard of more about this lake. And she's like, the Tillamook Forest? And I was like, yeah, I went through the Tillamook Forest. Now we're at the lake. She's like, no, tell me where you're at. Like, what are your cross streets? And I tell her, I'm at the beach. I didn't know. So I'm at the freaking beach. This guy took us to the beach. Our destination was Hagg Lake. So much for that flight plan. Anyway, Mike and I both realized that, like, hey, this is not Hagg Lake. We're now at the coast. Mike recognized right away. He's like, yeah, this is the beach. He lived there. He just had never been to Hagg Lake before. So anyway, we're at the beach. We decided to make the best of it. We pop into a restaurant and get some food. This guy, gosh, I can't remember what his name is, but the gamer tag is fitting. He has a couple of beers. And then we decide to get on the road. And so, yeah, we decided it's time to head back. And we start heading out. And the guy that was leading us, he just takes off. Like, we're riding for, like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. We make our way back into the woods. And he just is gone. Like, no consideration for us at all. We're just not there anymore in his perspective, I guess. But yeah, so Mike and I realize if we continue heading east, we'll eventually get sort of where we need to be, and then we can stop. There's no cell signal in the woods, 10 plus years ago. And so, yeah, we're just like, okay. And we figure as soon as we get cell signal, we'll stop and try to figure out where we are and get directions back home from that point. And so we're riding. We finally, I start getting notifications. So I stop and I check my phone. And again, Windows Phone, I think it was like Windows 6.5 or something. And I realized that I'm at this particular church, so I'm able to punch that church into the search engine at the time. I think I was using Yahoo, and I get an address for it, and then the address I was able to figure out, how to get home. And so Mike and I, we stretch out a little bit and then take off heading back home. At one point, two individuals pull up next to us, and we are, we're just riding. Mike and I are riding, and these two individuals, they catch up to us, and they pull up alongside of us, start revving at us a little bit, and the one rider just takes off jets. And I was like, I'm not just racing, Mike's new. I'm not just going to race somebody. And the other bike stayed with us, and instigating a little bit of a let's go, kind of thing. But I was just, whatever. And I look over, and because I'm focusing on trying to get home, and Mike, and I look over and I see this long. I'm about to be sexist here for like 2 seconds, but I see this long flowing blonde hair coming out of the helmet, just whipping around, and I was like, oh man, I have to race this person because it's a girl, right? So anyway, we hold head to head, and then we go. And that is the fastest that I've ever been on a land vehicle. I glance down, realize how quick I'm going. So we take off, and then the person's behind me. And this was not a matter of whose bike is better. This was a matter of who's willing to go, who's comfortable to go, as fast as they possibly can. Like whose self-preservation instinct is going to kick in first. And theirs did, and so I guess I won. But I glance down, the speed that I'm going at, I realize I don't know how to brake at this speed that we're going. I don't know how to slow down at this speed. And so I just clutch in, and I'm just like, I hope there's enough straight that I can get, back into a comfortable speed. And so I later found out that I had topped out the speedometer on this bike. Gearing maybe would have changed it. But so anyway, I'm slowing down. Once I get to a comfortable speed, I get well within the speed limit, and then I go much under. Mike eventually catches up. The girl takes off. She's back with her riding partner, and great. Mike catches up to me. We get to where we know where we're going. We split ways, and I get home. I've been out now for like 8 hours, and that was the first time that I saw Hagg Lake, and so yeah, that was that story. So yeah.